Today, I'm honored to be joined by Danielle Young, life coach, yoga teacher, and founder of Inspired Action Wellness. Danielle's story is one of unimaginable courage. After surviving domestic abuse and facing the darkest moment of her life alone with a newborn, she turned to yoga and self inquiry when traditional therapies fell short. Her healing journey became her mission to empower other women to move from survival to true embodied freedom. Today, she is here to share the tools, wisdom, and truth she wishes she had when she needed it most. Whether you're on your own healing path or holding space for someone else, this conversation is a powerful reminder that you are not alone and healing is possible. Danielle, I'm so happy to have you and to have you share your story today. So
Uh,
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, so in those darkest moments, and I, I too am a survivor of domestic abuse. So I get that feeling of being completely alone and isolated. How were you able, like, what happened for you to take that next step and to find the courage?
So, when I left my abuser, I had a 3-week-old baby. So, I was a brand new mom. And I had moved into my mom's as sort of a temporary reprieve, um, just to be able to get out. And I remember watching her while she was sleeping one night, and I thought, I can't be this person. I can't be an empty shell of a person. I need to really grow up, and I need to be the mom that she deserves, and I need to heal, and I need to figure this out. And it was sort of like a light bulb moment at that point. Like, I've been struck with something, it was like, okay, this is it. And she was a couple of months old by that point, and I'd spent all that time just like, how can I do this? I don't know how I can be a mom. How can I raise this human, this tiny human who's going to depend on me for anything when I can't even take care of myself right now. And it just hit me. Like, I have to be able to take care of her and myself at the same time. So I just made it a point to say, okay, I'll do whatever I need to do to get through this.
And what was the next step you did after that? Like, because there's one thing having that realization, but you are a shell of a person, because I felt exactly the same. That's how I always described myself when at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And that takes so much energy to take that next step. So how did you do that and what did you do?
It kind of almost just fell in my lap. I had hired an attorney to file for custody of my daughter once I left. And he was actually the one that said, do you have a plan in place? Like, are you going to therapy? And I was like, no, my family doesn't go to therapy. We were the kind of family to just kind of sweep everything under the rug and, become our own counsel. And I said, I don't know how this works. How do I? So he was the one who really helped me take that next step. And, he said, you're going to need some help going through this because this is a lot,
Yeah.
and that was just with the custody stuff. So I started going to therapy, and it it felt a little weird at first because I had never been through anything like that before. And it helped a little. It helped to kind of validate what I was feeling. But at the same time, it was like, okay, I don't feel the healing. I'm not, there's no actions here. I'm not, I'm not feeling any better. Like, it's great to talk about it, but nothing else is happening. And I stuck with that for a little bit until we got through the custody stuff. And then I moved on to yoga. I discovered yoga.
Amazing. So when you were doing the therapy, did you have realizations during that time of like what had happened and how you landed up in the situation? Or was it just like really validation and you being able to like have a safe space to just talk about your feelings?
It was both. I went through a a really long period of shame. Like, how could I let myself get in this situation? Why didn't I leave sooner? And the truth is I tried to leave like 7 times before that happened.
Wow.
And he just kept coming back. He kept stalking me. He kept, like pursuing me and call in the middle of the night. And, it was like, this is just easier. It's just easier to go back than it is to deal with this. And every time I went back, I kept thinking, okay, things will change. I left. Now he knows what it's like to be without me. Those thoughts would go through our head when we're so, manipulated by someone. And when I left, it was like, why did I keep going back? And I just kept asking myself why. I was shaming myself. I couldn't believe that this smart woman would go back. And it was like, why did I do this to myself? And it took me a really, really long time to figure out that it had nothing to do with me.
Hmm.
It was
Yeah.
all that was him. That was, his treatment of me was him.
And how did you get over the shame? Because I think that's one of the hardest things, the shame and the guilt that you have, especially when you have a child. Like you feel like, how could I have done this to my child? Or how could I let my child be involved in this? How could I have done this to myself? So moving past those two things is so vital to one's healing, but so it's difficult at the same time. So how did you do that?
That came a lot later, when I started doing self-inquiry. And that was when I realized that it wasn't me, it was him. Like, his treatment of me it didn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah.
And really working through my insecurities helped me see why I stayed, why I didn't want to leave, why I thought the things I did. And it really helped me overcome that feeling of shame because I thought, wow, okay, so there were 20 years going into this relationship of, bullying and being left by my dad and, all of this childhood stuff, that we all have. And that led me to get into this relationship. And then it led me to stay in the relationship
Mm.
and then ultimately ended the way that it did. And really self-inquiry was the part that helped me see all of that and helped me sort through like, okay, that's where that came from and that's where that came from. And then EMDR also helped with clearing the rest of that up.
So how did yoga start to affect you when you started doing that?
Yoga was a huge part of my healing. When I left, I was numb. I didn't feel anything. I started drinking. I became an alcoholic just because I wanted to escape, just because I wanted to numb everything. And a coworker had said, "Have you ever tried yoga?" I was like, "I come from a really small town. No. Like, what's yoga? Nobody's ever heard of yoga." And so she gave me a tape, a VHS tape, and she said, "Go home, try this." So I did, and it really started helping me get back into my body. Just sitting there on my floor. I didn't even have a mat at the time. It was basically just sitting on my rug in my living room. And just slowly doing these poses, and I didn't even do them all because it felt really odd, but just the few that I did, It was like, oh, okay, I can see how this is sort of a reconnection. And then I started doing the whole tape, and then it became like this, okay, now I know I have to do this because this is how I feel better. So it was really that integration back into my body that yoga helped with.
So how did you also, because you talk about this and you work with your clients like this, rebuilding your identity and transforming yourself after trauma. How did you do that for yourself and how do you do that with your clients?
So for myself, I did that through the modalities that I now teach.
Yeah.
Yoga was a huge part, self-inquiry is a huge part, nervous system regulation, huge part. It's really important that we learn that the things that happen to us are not our fault. That has to do with other people, but it is our responsibility to heal from it. So what helped me the most was just doing that. It was like, okay, recognizing where my insecurities lied and then working on that and building confidence to move forward, knowing that this is where they come from and having the tools to work on them. And that's exactly what I do with my clients. I give them the tools and we say, okay, here's where this comes from. We do self-inquiry. Oh, puppy.
It's biting me, so I'm trying to like get it to stop biting me. I should have kept it out of the room.
It's okay. I love dogs. I kicked mine out. So
That's what I should have done.
so anyway, that's what I do with my clients. I give them the same tools that works for me, and all of them may not work for them. And so we just find what works. And self-inquiry is so powerful. Like if nobody does anything else, that's the one thing that I say, really do that, because it starts really shaping your perspective on what happened and how your place in it, how you're dealing with it, and then what you want to look like dealing with it. And you see the whole situation from different perspectives, and it really helps with, wow, okay, a lot of light bulb moments happen in self-inquiry.
For those who don't know what inquiry is, can you explain it?
Yep. So it's a process of taking a negative thought and we challenge it against some questions, and then we turn it around and we see it from different perspectives. We go through what your life looks like now with the thought, and we tie it back to a childhood memory. And then we go through and like, hey, if you never had this thought, if it never showed up on your radar, what would your life look like? And then we turn it around and it's like, well, I didn't see it that way. It's like, no, we don't. We walk through with these blinders on because we don't know how to see it any other way unless someone tells us and teaches us how.
So how does that work with the yoga? Like, because you do both and you found both so impactful in your journey. So how do they work together?
Yoga really slows everything down. So yoga is a great nervous system reset. Um, and what I teach with yoga is mostly breathing and just holding poses, like getting, feeling back into the body, reintegrating with, like somatics with like yin, especially. Yin yoga is great for recovering. And it's breathing techniques. It's just holding postures. I do yoga nidra, which is a meditative type of yoga. Um, the two together really holistically balance the body.
Yeah, I recently discovered yin yoga. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
It is so, so good.
Yeah. It's
Um,
my favorite by far.
so I want to take a step back now and like a little bit of your story. And so what was life like before you left?
In the relationship,
Yeah, just even in general, like what were you working? Were you doing like in the healing arts? I'm just so curious to see how much and to show the audience how much your life has transformed and changed, and I mean, now you're in service to others, which is incredible.
Yeah. In the relationship, um, starting off in the relationship, I had dreams, I had goals. I was in college. I mean, when I met him, I was 18 and I was going to college. I was working towards a future. I knew what I wanted. I had, all of these aspirations. And then when I met him, he didn't like me going to college. He didn't like the fact that I had friends. He didn't like the fact that I had family. He really tried, well, he didn't try, he did, to isolate me from all of that. When I would go out with friends, with my best friend, would he would not be happy. I would come home to just destruction in our apartment. Um, I did have a job, but he did not like that I worked for a man. So he called my work, threatened my boss. I in turn got fired. Um, it was just he didn't like me working, but yet he didn't want to work. So towards the end of my pregnancy, I was working 3 jobs just to try to keep a roof over our head. And he would sleep all day and go out at night. I wasn't allowed to know where he was. Um, I would have to, check in at all times. He didn't like when I if he didn't know where I was, that was not okay. He controlled our money. I was not allowed to have any money. Um, Everything that I made basically went to like just paying bills.
Hmm.
And yeah, he was an alcoholic. He was a drug addict. He Alcohol was the biggest problem. Drugs, he smoked a lot of pot, but other than that, he didn't really do anything else. Uh, he was allowed to go places I wasn't. It was just very controlling, very dominating, very jealous. Oh, he was very, very jealous. Um, yeah, he would give me a certain amount of money and, groceries. Groceries was a big contention between us. I wasn't allowed to have anything that he couldn't eat or drink or he didn't enjoy or, that was a big no-no. When I was pregnant, I was trying to take care of myself and I would, want to buy healthy foods and he would not allow that. Um, yeah, I mean, just a lot of control, a lot of domination, a lot of jealousy.
So, I mean, some of the things you say were so similar to mine, similar and different. But for people who are listening and they're thinking, there's probably two thoughts for people who are listening. The one is for people who have not lived through this, they're like, but how do you stay in a relationship like that? Can you touch on that? And then
Oh,
for people who are in the relationship, what, as a second part of the question is, what would you say to them to give them the courage to do what they need to do, whether they need to leave or they just need to change things? Because some people really feel like they can't leave.
mhm.
So I want to just, yeah, touch on those two things.
Yeah, I was that person. I thought I can't leave.
Yeah.
I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any money. I don't have anywhere to go. So to answer the first part, why didn't we just leave? Because we can't. We can't. It's that simple. It's not it's not an easy answer. There is so much manipulation that goes into an abusive relationship. When when you're in it, you feel like you can't leave because number 1, your life is probably in danger.
Yeah.
Number 2, your livelihood is in danger. And number 3, like in my case, I had a baby. I knew he was going to come after us.
Mm.
He was probably going to try to get custody. And you know, they have you so wrapped up in their mindset that you feel trapped.
Mm.
It's not as simple as just walking out the door. There's all of these things that go into it. He had me believing that I couldn't live without him. He had me believing that he would find me wherever I was if I left him. He had me believing that nobody else was going to want me.
Mm-hmm.
He was the only one who loved me, and that was it. And so I equated love with abuse. Because if he's the only one who loves me and he says he loves me, well, then this is the only way I'm ever going to find love, is to stay with him. You know,
Yeah.
it feeds into your insecurities. So your mind does all of these things to keep you safe, like stay, um, the gaslighting. It's really all about control. It's not easy to leave. Like I said, I almost left 7 times. I
Yeah.
tried to leave 7 times before I actually did, and he stalked me. He would drive by my house in the middle of the night. It was almost like it was just easier to stay so I didn't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more going into it than just, why don't you walk out the door? Well, a lot of reasons why I didn't just walk out the door. And
And
then the
then,
second part of
yeah.
that, if you're in it, the thing for me was I didn't realize that there was help out there. That there are resources now. Back then there weren't a lot, but now, you know, there are so many resources. As I was doing research for my book, I'm like, wow, there are a ton of resources now for women who are in this situation. And you're not alone. That was the thing. I felt like I was so alone. No one was going to understand me. I was on an island. I didn't want people to know what I had gone through. I didn't want that stigma. I didn't want that label of being abused. And I really did think that nobody would believe me. And the one thing that I want people who are listening who are in that situation to know is you're believed. There are people out there like myself, like, the domestic hotline, that do believe you, that will believe you, and they will get you the help that you need to get out of the situation safely. If that's not the route you want to go, if you're able to, start telling people, start telling a trusted friend or family member, like, hey, this is what's been going on. Start documenting everything. Because when you get out of that relationship, you are going to need that documentation just in case. Talk to an attorney. Start saving money if you have a job. Just start squirreling away anything that you possibly can to start building up a little bit of a savings so you have a little bit of money when you do leave. That was the one thing that I couldn't do, um was put money away when I left. He wouldn't let me have any.
Mm.
So thankfully I had my mom to fall back on. But stay at a friend's, really start talking to people about this. Say, hey, I want to make a plan, and start making a plan. Have that in place where it's like, okay, I want to leave and I want to leave safely. How do I do that? Well, I can go here, and I know that I'll be safe at this place. He doesn't know where this person lives. Really, it comes down to making sure you have a plan in
So you mentioned that you didn't want to tell anyone. You were worried that people wouldn't believe you, and you really had that sense of, and that I think goes along with the shame and the isolation
place.
together. But now you help women. You have a book. You do all of these things. What was the try? Because there's one thing to go and heal for yourself and to do all the things that you need to do for yourself. But what was that moment when you realized that this is your mission and this is how you want to serve in the world?
Honestly, that came as a download in a meditation one day. I at the beginning of the pandemic, like everybody, it was this whole my husband had ended up in the hospital. He almost died. It was like, okay, reset. Something needs to change here. Something needs to like be bigger than this. And early on, I think it was in 21, I got my self-inquiry certification. And a friend of mine in that group said, "Hey, you'd be an amazing life coach." Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I I'll think about it. Well, then it was universe was like, "Yes, you should do that," because it was a couple of days later I saw this ad for life coaching. So I was like, "Okay, sign from the universe, I'll sign up for it." So I did, and I got certified in life coaching, and I started doing coaching, but it wasn't what I was doing now. And I thought, this isn't fulfilling me. And so last August, I was meditating, and I'm like, all right, what am I supposed to do with my life? Like, what am I doing here? And it came to me, like, you need to start telling your story. And I thought, okay, I'm in a place where I think I can. I think I can really start speaking out. And so I rebranded my company, and I just ran at it full throttle. And I said, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. And everything since then has just been like, clear the path.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It
It
truly
needs
is.
to be talked about. This
Yeah.
is one of the things that thrives in silence. And the more light we shed on it, I feel like the more light we shed on it, the more resources will go towards it. The more people will understand what it is and what happens and what it does to people and how hard it is to recover from it. It's not just something that you can just get over. It's not like, oh, I left, I'm better now. No, there's so much that goes into it. And people don't realize that. So
Yeah.
my mission is to really help women especially understand, like, hey, I get it. I get where you're at right now, and there is hope. There's hope.
Yeah, I feel like that's, it's not just like, oh, you leave the relationship and it's over. Your whole distortion of the world has changed. Like it's been distorted, should I say. Your whole perception of the world has been distorted, and your ability to not only trust other people but even trust yourself and your own perception, you lose that. So how did you regain that for yourself?
Honestly, I just started doing the thing.
Yeah.
I knew that going into this part is easy for me. This part is, yeah, I can tell you what I did to heal. I can teach you what I did to heal. I can help you heal. On a daily basis, though, I still go through it. I still have those flashbacks. I still have those repressed memories come up. I still have those moments where I think, what am I doing? And I just go back to what I know. I go back to my own training, and I go back to what I teach. And, you know, that helps every single time because it's just ego. It's just ego wanting to keep us safe. It's this little voice in our head that pops up every time that says, hey, jazz hands, maybe you don't know what you're doing. And it's like, no, shut up. I do. I know what I'm doing. I've got this. And it's just really realizing that that's just a voice.
Yeah.
That's not the driver. You're the driver. That's the voice. That's the backseat driver that's trying to tell you where to go, but you have control of the steering wheel.
So I know
That's
that one
helping you through it.
I know that one thing that was really very impactful for me, and I would love to get your thoughts on this, is differentiating that voice. Because a lot of the times you've picked up the stuff that isn't yours.
Mhm.
Your unworthiness, the shame and the guilt and the I am less than and all of that stuff is just been put onto you. So did you find that differentiating the different voices inside of you and identifying who they belong to was helpful?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And a lot of it was going back to childhood. We start forming our perceptions and beliefs by the age of 6.
Yeah.
So any childhood stuff that you've gone through, you're carrying that through to childhood, or sorry, to adulthood. So really it's sitting down and saying, okay, I need to trace this thought back. And where does this come from? And it really is sitting down and getting real with yourself. You know, it's just sitting alone and getting really, really scarily real with yourself. No hiding, no masks. Just, okay, why do I feel this way? Why do I think like this? And it's recognizing, oh, hey, okay, it goes back to this. Well, before that was this. And pretty soon you start to trace things back and it becomes very clear where that started from. And sometimes we can't do that. Sometimes I know there were quite a few where I'm like, I don't know where this thought came from. And then I would be around family members and I'm like, oh, that's where that came from. It came from hearing this and being around this when I was a kid, okay, that's where that comes from. And then self-inquiry again, it uncovers so much.
It's
Like,
excellent. Yeah.
yeah, really, that forces you to trace it back.
So you have changed, and you are strong, and you have realized that some of the stuff comes from your childhood. So how do you parent differently now because of that?
My daughter was the one that was 3 weeks old when I left, and she'll be 25 on Friday.
Just amazing.
And she has seen me go through so much of this healing journey. It's like that saying, when you know better, you do better.
Mm.
And I was living through, I was just surviving when she was little. But I knew that I never wanted to be like my parents. I knew, I mean, my dad was gone. My mom was living through her own survival mode as a single parent. And I knew that I wanted to do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. I made it a point to start to do things differently with her. And then once I healed more, I could deal with more and I could recognize more about myself and about my, parenting techniques. And then when my son came along, he just turned 14. My idea of parenting had completely changed by that point. I was so much more into emotional regulation and letting them cry and letting them express their feelings, where I didn't have that. Everything in my childhood was suppression, because my family was like, we don't know how to deal with that. They didn't know how to deal with their own emotional stuff. So when it came around to me, it was like, we don't know how to deal with you either. So we're just, quiet. Shh, it's okay. But with my kids, I'm like, no, you know what? Cry.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll work through this. We talk. I never spanked my kids. I never hit my kids. That was the one thing that I said I will never do, is punish my children like that.
Yeah.
And I never did. And it was always, I looked at everything with parenting as a rational point of view. It was like, okay, I put myself in their shoes. How are they feeling? How are they thinking? Because that was never done for me. You know, my I love my mom. She's like my best friend, but her lens was skewed because she was in survival.
Mm.
And what she knew about parenting was how her parents parented her. And that's what she passed on to me. And I refuse to see it through that lens. I'm like, I need to put on a different pair of glasses here. And so I really made it a point to change the glasses.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I do yoga nidra with my son. He used to go to yoga with me all the time. My daughter does not like yoga, but my son would go with me all the time. He was just itty bitty. He had his little yoga mat and he would go to yoga with me, and he loved it. He would sit and he would he would, sit on the floor, and, I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm getting the force." It was so cute, but
Mm.
and I'm so glad that I instilled that
Yeah.
in him.
It's a life skill and a tool that he'll have forever.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Danielle, as we draw to the end here, is there anything that you want to share that I haven't asked you about?
Oh, do I want to share? No. No, just, final thought, if you're in this, it's okay to get out. You're not a failure. Um, it's okay to heal. Healing's not linear. There will be ups and
Yeah.
downs, but it is possible. I'm living, breathing proof. And, just it's okay. It's okay.
So, where can people find you if they want to connect with you and work with you and all that good stuff?
My website is inspiredactionwellness.com, and there's quite a few things on there. I'm also on all the social media channels under Inspired Action Wellness as well. But my website's probably the easiest place to get to me from. I've got some resources on there, and you can order my book. Um, yeah.
It's awesome, and we'll put all the links in the show notes as well. So if you want to connect with Danielle, we'll make it easy for you guys. And thank you so much for sharing your story and the courage that you have to actually share your story.
Thank you so much.
It's inspiring.
Thank you.